Hello everyone, back again doing a reaction slash just listen to this video, and I'm gonna upload this whenever I can and we'll go from there. This one's called 10 Pokemon I'd love to see get a new Mega Evolutions. Pokemon Legends ZA came out February 28th, 2025, before the game actually came out, I assume. And it is by Dankosaur. So here we go. It's 14 minutes long.
After exactly 1 year of waiting, we finally got some more news regarding Pokemon Legends ZA. We saw a ton of amazing things, including the new starters and the first look on what Mega Evolution looks like in this game. And while I know that they haven't announced any yet, I'm coping a little that they're absolutely going to add some new ones at some point. I mean,
you could
come
just
on,
say
they
hoping.
have to, right? But regardless, I decided to compile a list of 10 Pokemon I personally would love to see get one whenever the time comes. Also, a quick heads up, I already made a video similar to this one, so if I talked about a Pokemon in that video, I won't be bringing it up here. If you want to check it out, I'll link it probably in the description, but it's also a little bit outdated. Just please don't go after my neck if I don't bring up Flygon in this video. I mainly wanted to focus on the underdogs, and if anything, I'm happy with anything getting a Mega Evolution as long as it isn't Mega Charizard Z. But I do want to start with the most generic Pokemon on the list. It's always been crazy to me that only one Kalos Pokemon got access to the gimmick that literally defines their region. And while there are a ton of cool Gen 6 Pokemon I'd love to see Mega Evolve, including more that I'll talk about later, I'm going to start with a very basic choice in Talonflame. It's the native bird of Kalos and a very well-liked Pokemon among the fan base, so there's a lot of good reasoning behind why it should get one. At some point, it used to be one of the best Pokemon in the game thanks to its ability, Gale Wings, giving priority to all of the flying type attacks it can use. But ever since the nerf it received, Talonflame has taken a bit of a back seat. It does have its niche here and there thanks to having great utility, but for the most part, he's kinda just been a chill guy. However, it's been 3 whole generations since then. Even if it doesn't end up being great in battle or whatever, it would still just be nice as a tribute to one of the more popular Pokemon from Gen 6. It's also pretty interesting to note that only one native bird Pokemon actually has a Mega Evolution, and that of course is Pidgeot, which, not to be a hater, is very unsurprising. But speaking of Gen 1 pampering, I do have a singular Kanto Pokemon on this list. One that, although Kanto Pokemon usually get a ton of attention, this one just always ends up with the shortest end of the stick, at least in my opinion, and that award goes to Golem. Now, I don't know if it's just me, but I always classify these specific 4 Pokemon into the same group, and it's that group of powerful Stage 2 Pokemon that you could only evolve through trading. And between these 4 Pokemon, I do think that Golem gets the least amount of love. Gengar and Alakazam already got Mega Evolutions, and Machamp in Gen 8 got a Gigantamax form, albeit a really terrible one. I'm not gonna lie, I was very close to giving this spot to Machamp anyways, because I don't think there's a single person in the world who actually cares about G-Max Machamp. But none of that compares to this putrid, just ugly Alolan form that Golem received. Okay, yeah, I guess it could be worse, but compared to something like Alolan Ninetales, there was almost no reason to look at Alolan Golem twice. The best part about it was sadly just watching it blow up. I'll admit Galvanized Explosion was pretty funny, but that's no way to live. Golem deserves a much better legacy than this, and I think a new Mega Evolution is exactly what it would need for people to start respecting it a little bit more. Moving forward 1 generation, I must say that with how little Pokemon are in Gen 2, they got a ton of pretty cool Megas. A lot of fan favorites were picked, and let's be honest, Ampharos has the coolest Mega. You cannot convince me otherwise. Obviously, they didn't go with every great Pokemon from Gen 2, so if they decide to go with one more Pokemon, we have a ton of pretty cool options here. Personally, I would be happy with anything as long as it's not Blissey. That whole line could leave for all I care. But if I had to choose one, I think I would go with Crobat. I've always been pretty fond of Crobat, and I would use it as my flying type in a lot of games, if I liked it more than a regional bird. Crobat has always been really strong in my opinion, but as with a lot of older Pokemon nowadays, it got power crept really hard. The biggest thing it always had going for it was its speed, which at 130 is still really good. But nowadays, we're just getting more and more really fast Pokemon that provide much more to the table, with some of them even being faster than Crobat. It's also a shame that the Crobat line is one of the remaining Pokemon that isn't in Scarlet and Violet even after both DLCs. So what better way to make your return than having a sick and awesome new Mega Evolution? Now there's just one generation that I can't tell if Game Freak respects, and that is Gen 5. Not only did they they presumably skip Black and White when it comes to new games. But in X and Y, Gen 5 only received a singular Mega Evolution, and it just happens to be the worst one. There are a lot of great choices for Gen 5, and I made this exact same speech before when I talked about Chandelure. But today, I'd like to draw your attention towards
very
Crocodile.
like
Crocodile is just
scripted
one of those
talking
Pokemon that is
voice.
super hard to dislike in my opinion. It just looks really cool, and it has this sick type combination of
Well, yeah.
ground and dark. But as time went
Look at how
on,
it
this
works.
thing kind of just faded away. It never really had anything going for it to really be on
Yeah, a
people's
lot of
radar.
times
I mean,
they
sure,
do
it
that
looked
because
cool, but so
they
did a lot
don't
of Pokemon,
use them.
especially from Gen
And
5.
wait for
And while
Gen
it was
5
pretty good in
remake and
battle, it
they'll
also
be
came around
special
right
again.
before the release of Fairy type Pokemon.
What
So
they're
its
gonna
time got
probably
cut
do.
short since a lot of Dark type Pokemon suffered really badly during that era. Now it also had the great fortune of being Ash's ace in the Black and White anime. But somebody had to tell me this because I just didn't pay attention to that series. And I'm aware that a lot of people think of it as the worst Pokemon anime out there. I just think that Crocodile was a really cool Pokemon with a lot of unfortunate circumstances around it. And personally, I think it deserves so much better, which is why I would love to see it get a new Mega Evolution. And we're not done with Gen 5 yet, as there's one Pokemon with a very ride or die fan base that I respect a lot. I don't know if it's just the interactions I've seen, but Golurk isn't a Pokemon that comes up often when people bring up their favorite Pokemon. But the people that do love Golurk really love Golurk. And I'll admit, they kind of sold me on this one. When I first played through Black and White, I didn't really care about this thing. But the whole stick it has of turning itself into a rocket launcher and sometimes even a cannon,
I'll be right back here. I'm just editing something.
is kind of sick. And this came from the generation that all the Poke Boomers despised when it came to new Pokemon designs. But you cannot sit here and tell me that this giant rock with arms is the cooler Golem. The lore behind Golurk is pretty interesting as well. Being made by humans in ancient times to protect both people and Pokemon is something that could fit really well in a Legends game. Now the odds of them giving attention to Golurk is super low, as it hasn't really gotten anything over previous generations either. But
Once
at the
again,
same time, you have to
we have
realize
to
that they
see
gave
on
a Mega Evolution
the
to
Gen
Audino of all
5
Pokemon, who you
remakes.
could argue is even less
I
popular
don't
than
understand
Golurk,
why
and
people
it
are
doesn't
not
really help that this game
expecting
clearly takes place in the
or
future, but
waiting
maybe they
for
could use
the
that
Gen
to their
5
advantage
remake
in some
before
way.
they really
Regardless, I would
just
just
say,
love to
oh, I
see
give
Golurk
up.
win for once, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. But now, this is the part of the video where I say if you're enjoying it so far, please let me know
I'm
by
sure
leaving
Nintendo
a like, and
and
if you're
whatnot are
really
paying attention
liking
to
the
some of
vid,
these
I'd
videos.
appreciate it if you subbed as well.
And
It
enough
just lets me
people
know
talk
that I'm
about
doing a
it,
good
and
job,
there
and
you
it
go.
would mean a lot. Up next, I want to talk about a Pokemon that I feel has been a bit robbed compared to the other mythicals from its generation. Pokemon X and Y didn't come out with a lot of them, but it always felt like that Volcanion got the short end of the stick. If you think about it, Diancie holds the title of being the only Gen 6 Pokemon with a Mega Evolution, and Hoopa has this sick and crazy transformation that was responsible for one of the wildest plots I've ever seen in a Pokemon movie. And do you know what Volcanion got? Arguably one of the worst TCG sets of all time. I'm not sure if there's even anything else to say about this one. I don't even like Volcanion that much compared to the other two, but maybe that would change if they gave it the awesome treatment that they gave the other two mythicals. Also, if you're assuming that Xerneas and Yveltal are getting some sort of new form like how Dialga and Palkia did, that would leave Volcanion as the only legendary or mythical Pokemon from X and Y without a super cool transformation. So hey, let's just hope that Volcanion doesn't get shafted again. If you couldn't tell by now, I'm definitely somebody that loves seeing overlooked Pokemon in the spotlight. But unfortunately, a lot of my favorite Pokemon just so happens to be the funny guys. And besides maybe Sableye, I don't think we have any of those types of Mega Evolutions. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to propose Mega Cramorant.
Okay, it seems pretty new to expect that, but okay, sure.
Propose Mega Cramorant. Okay, seriously, I know almost nobody cares for this thing, but he's just so goofy and fun, so I'm really sad that he never caught on with people. Cramorant is what we call a gimmick Pokemon, as in they have something unique about them that they rely on to stand out from other Pokemon. In this case, it's Cramorant's signature ability, Gulp Missile. How it works is that upon using Surf or Dive, he will scoop up an Arrokuda in his mouth that he will spit at the opponent upon receiving damage. And hey, if I see any Hawk Tua jokes in the comments, you're getting banned. He also has like a 25% chance of
You
finding a
literally
Pikachu
just said
instead,
it, so you're
which will
asking
also
for it.
paralyze the opponent